Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. Imagine holding in your hand a small copper-colored coin, a piece so tiny and ordinary that most people would pass it without a second thought, yet within this small disc lies a story stretching back over a century, a story of artistry, economics, and the dreams of millions of people who have touched it. The 2021 cent coin, widely known as the Lincoln Shield cent, is the latest chapter in a saga that began all the way back in 1909, when President Theodore Roosevelt sought to beautify America's coinage and to honor Abraham Lincoln on the centennial of his birth. What you hold today, if you look closely at a 2020 cent, is the modern descendant of that same design tradition, bearing the image of Lincoln on the obverse side and the Union Shield on the reverse, a design that speaks silently of national unity and resilience. The 2020 cent is composed primarily of zinc, about 97.5%, with a thin copper plating that gives it the familiar reddish hue. Its weight is precisely 2.5 grams, its diameter 19.05 millimeters, and its thickness just 1.52 millimeters, small dimensions yet packed with meaning and history. When you tilt it under the light, the copper glints with a warm tone that has been part of the American visual vocabulary for generations. On the obverse, you see Abraham Lincoln's right-facing bust, designed by Victor David Brenner more than 100 years ago, still enduring as one of the longest-running portraits in U.S. coinage history. Above Lincoln's head runs the motto, "In God We Trust," while to the left is the word, "Liberty," and to the right the date 2020, along with the mint mark if present, either a small D for Denver or a P for Philadelphia, although the Philadelphia cent traditionally bears no mint mark. On the reverse of the 2020 cent, introduced in 2010, the Union Shield appears as a bold and simple design. Created by artist Lindo Bass and sculpted by Joseph Mena, the shield has 13 vertical stripes representing the original colonies joined together under a single horizontal bar that carries the national motto, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one. Across the lower part of the shield runs a scroll bearing the word, 1 cent, in raised lettering. This reverse design replaced the prior Lincoln bicentennial designs of 2009 and symbolically connects the 1 cent coin back to the era of the Union and the nation's survival through the Civil War, an era when Lincoln's leadership held the country together. While a 2020 cent is common and billions were produced, over $7.6 billion just from the Philadelphia Mint alone and over $4.5 billion from the Denver Mint, there are rare varieties, mint errors, and high-grade specimens that capture the attention of collectors and sometimes command extraordinary prices in auctions. Imagine, for example, a flawless 2020 cent graded MS-70 by a leading grading service like PCGS or NGC, meaning it is absolutely perfect under magnification. These coins, while not worth millions, can still bring significant premiums from collectors who strive to assemble perfect sets. There have also been rumors and occasional reports of extraordinary errors, double dies, off-center strikes, or coins struck on the wrong planchet, such as a cent struck on a dime planchet, which is smaller and silver-colored. These errors can transform an ordinary penny into a collectible worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The idea that one of these coins could be worth $143 million is astonishing, yet it shows the power of rarity and human imagination. People love the story of the underdog object, the notion that a single small cent could be the hidden treasure of a lifetime, a lottery ticket in metal form. To understand why someone might believe such a value, one must step back and think about how the coin market operates. Coin values are driven by rarity, condition, demand, and historical significance. For example, the 1943 copper cent, an error made during World War II when cents were supposed to be struck on steel planchets, has sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. The 1794 flowing hair silver dollar, the first silver dollar ever issued by the United States, sold for over $10 million. If a 2020 cent existed that was uniquely different, say a one-of-a-kind prototype, struck in pure gold as a test, or a coin personally handled and signed by a president with perfect documentation, it could theoretically fetch astronomical sums because collectors will pay enormous amounts for one-of-one items with indisputable provenance. This is where the myth of a 2020 cent worth $143 million likely arises, out of the blending of fact and fantasy, the wishful thinking that somewhere among the billions of ordinary cents there lies a single magical coin. As you hold a 2020 cent and study its surfaces, you are also seeing the results of over 2 centuries of minting technology. The blank metal disc, called a planchet, begins as part of a long rolled sheet of zinc coated with copper, punched into blanks by high-speed presses, and then fed through a coining press where steel dies strike it with pressures exceeding 60 tons, imprinting the design with incredible detail in fractions of a second. The raised rims are formed to protect the design, and the tiny initials, VDB, of Victor David Brenner can still be seen below Lincoln's shoulder on the obverse, a tiny signature of the man who began this enduring design lineage. Each year, the United States Mint produces these coins by the billions not only for circulation but also for collectors, who buy uncirculated rolls, mint sets, and proof sets. The proof versions of the 2020 cent were struck at the San Francisco Mint with mirrored fields and frosted devices, packaged in protective plastic to preserve their perfection. These proof cents are more visually striking and can command higher prices than their circulating cousins, though still far from the realm of millions. The paradox is striking. While the 2020 cent is one of the most common coins in existence, the dream of finding a rare variation drives people to examine their change with hope and excitement. The 2020 cent stands as a symbol of everyday commerce, of the anonymous hands of millions who spend and save, yet it also sparks the imagination with the possibility that something extraordinary could be hidden in plain sight. To truly appreciate the 2020 cent, and why it captures so much attention, you have to step back into the mists of time and trace the story of the Lincoln cent from its very beginning, because the 2020 version is not just a coin, it is the descendant of a revolutionary design decision that changed American currency forever. In 1909, the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth was approaching, and President Theodore Roosevelt, who had already been driving a bold redesign of American coinage with artists like Augustus St. Gaudens, decided that Lincoln, the savior of the Union, should be the first real person ever depicted on a circulating American coin. Before Lincoln, U.S. coins had always featured allegorical figures like Liberty rather than real historical people, but Roosevelt wanted to honor Lincoln's legacy and show the dignity of the nation's leaders. The sculptor Victor David Brenner was chosen to create the portrait, and he produced a striking design of Lincoln's profile, based on a photograph by Matthew Brady. When the new cent debuted in 1909, it caused a sensation. People lined up to get the new Lincoln cents, and the public reaction was so intense that the first day's supply sold out almost immediately. Brenner had placed his full initials VDB prominently on the reverse at the bottom, but critics complained it was too conspicuous, so the Mint removed them mid-year. This created the famous 1909 SVDB cent from the San Francisco Mint, one of the rarest and most coveted Lincoln cents of all time, worth thousands of dollars today even in worn condition. That moment marked the beginning of the Lincoln cent's long journey through history, a journey that would carry it through world wars, depressions, and the technological revolutions of the minting process. Over the decades, the Lincoln cent's reverse design changed from the wheat ears of 1909 to 1958, to the Lincoln Memorial from 1959 to 2008, to the 4 rotating bicentennial designs in 2009, and finally to the Union Shield design from 2010 onward, which is the one on the 2020 cent. Each change reflected the evolving identity of America, and yet Lincoln's portrait on the obverse has remained almost untouched, an unbroken link to the past. Collectors look at these coins not just as money but as miniature time machines, each one carrying the imprint of the year it was struck, each one a silent witness to history. The Lincoln Memorial reverse showed the tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, barely visible under magnification, a tribute to his enduring presence. The shield design returned to the idea of national unity and echoes the imagery of the Civil War era, which Lincoln embodies. This continuity and evolution give the 2020 cent a deeper meaning, because it is part of something far older than itself, a living tradition more than a century old. When people see a date like 2020, they remember that year for the pandemic, for upheavals and change, and the cent of that year becomes a token of memory, a piece of metal that silently records the atmosphere of the times. In terms of value, Most 2020 cents are worth only their face value of 1 cent, but condition is everything in numismatics. A cent fresh from the mint, with no scratches, no contact marks, brilliant red luster, and sharp strike can receive a grade of MS 67 or higher from grading companies. Such pieces are scarce because even the slightest imperfection lowers the grade. High-grade 2020 cents can sell for tens or hundreds of dollars to collectors trying to build the finest registry sets. But far more dramatic are mint errors. The minting process is incredibly fast and automated, yet mistakes slip through. A double die error happens when the die shifts between strikes, creating a doubled image on the coin. Off-center strikes occur when the planchet is misaligned in the press, leaving part of the design missing. Broad strikes, clipped planchets, and die breaks can create spectacular oddities. Collectors love these because they are tangible evidence of the mechanical drama inside the mint. If a 2020 cent were discovered with an unprecedented and dramatic error, say struck on a gold planchet, or a double denomination error where a cent was struck over a dime, it could command huge prices at auction because it would be unique. That is where myths of $100 million cents arise, the idea of absolute uniqueness combined with perfect condition and famous provenance. Imagine if a 2020 cent had been personally struck by a president as a ceremonial first strike, documented, and kept pristine in a museum-quality holder, then released to the market decades later. The bidding frenzy could explode into tens of millions because collectors with vast fortunes often battle each other for trophies that symbolize absolute rarity. The coin market is shaped by this psychology. Rarity fuels desire, and desire fuels price. This is why a small piece of copper from 1943 can bring hundreds of thousands, and why the first silver dollar of 1794 brought over 10 million. People are not paying for the metal content, which is almost nothing. They are paying for the story, the history, and the prestige of owning something no one else can have. The dream that a 2020 cent could be worth $143 million is an extreme fantasy, but it reveals the way collectors think, the pursuit of the ultimate treasure. Every great collector secretly hopes to find the impossible coin, the one no one else knows exists. This dream drives people to search through rolls of cents from banks, to examine change under magnifying glasses, to send coins to grading services on the off chance that one will come back as a perfect MS-70, or as an unknown error. The 2020 cent fuels this dream because it is modern and abundant yet full of hidden possibilities. Billions exist, yet perhaps somewhere among them lies a spectacular accident of history waiting to be discovered. That is the paradox of the cent, simultaneously the most common and the most potentially surprising coin in the world. At the same time, the 2020 cent is a technological marvel in miniature. Each coin is struck with die pressures of around 60 tons per strike at rates of hundreds per minute. The dies themselves are carved using computer-aided laser technology based on digital models, ensuring incredible precision. The copper plating is just 0.0003 inches thick over the zinc core, yet it adheres tightly through electroplating. The entire manufacturing process is a ballet of high-speed machinery turning raw metal into finished coins by the billions. When you hold a single 2020 cent, you are holding the product of this vast industrial choreography, a tiny piece of mass-produced perfection. Yet despite their industrial origin, individual cents can develop unique personalities through toning, contact marks, and subtle variations that make each one different. Collectors notice these small details the way art critics study brushstrokes. The luster on a fresh cent flows in radial patterns called cartwheel luster, a shimmering effect that vanishes as the coin circulates. This is why untouched mint state coins command high premiums. They preserve that original brilliance. The 2020 cent also carries symbolic weight in American culture. It represents thrift, small beginnings, and the notion that even the smallest units matter. The phrase, "A penny saved is a penny earned," echoes the spirit of Benjamin Franklin, though he never appeared on the cent. Children often encounter the cent as their first coin, their introduction to money, which gives it a nostalgic power. The idea that a simple cent could be worth millions feeds the human love of stories about hidden treasures. Legends about rare pennies circulate constantly, and while most are exaggerated, They keep public interest alive and lead new generations to discover numismatics. If someone were to stumble on a unique 2020 cent with verifiable, unprecedented characteristics, a once-in-history minting event, it could become the most famous cent in the world, and in theory, collectors could push its price into the stratosphere simply because they want to own that fame. That is how value is created in the world of collectibles, by rarity, demand, and narrative. There are moments in history when the ordinary becomes extraordinary, when something so common and overlooked is suddenly revealed to be priceless, and the entire world stops to stare in disbelief. That is exactly what happened in the story of the fabled 2020 cent that stunned the numismatic world. It began quietly, like most great discoveries do, in the most unexpected of places. A retired machinist named Harold Whitmore, living in a small town in Illinois, was sorting through a jar of loose change that had sat untouched on his workbench since the early days of the pandemic. The coins clinked softly as he poured them onto a cloth, just an assortment of nickels, dimes, quarters, and pennies that had been gathered from coffee shop visits, grocery store runs, and vending machines during that strange, lockdown year. He wasn't a collector, not really, but he had a magnifying glass and a curious mind, and as he sifted through the pile, one coin caught his eye. It was a 2020 Lincoln cent, bright, untouched, but something about it seemed different. The surface gleamed more intensely than the others, the color richer, almost golden under the shop light. He picked it up and noticed the edges felt slightly sharper, the strike impossibly crisp, every line of Lincoln's beard hair razor clear under magnification. The weight seemed odd in his hand, heavier somehow. Out of curiosity, he placed it on his small digital scale and the number startled him. 3.11 grams, the traditional weight of the old brown cents from before 1982, not the lighter 2.5 grams of modern zinc cents. Yet the date was unmistakably 2020. That tiny discrepancy lit a spark of curiosity that would soon ignite the entire coin world. Harold mailed the coin to a grading company, expecting little more than a routine evaluation. But when the package arrived at the professional coin grading service offices, the graders were stunned. Their instruments confirmed what Harold's scale had hinted. The coin was struck not on the standard zinc planchet, but on a mysterious alloy of 95% copper and trace gold, something never seen on a modern cent. Under electron microscope analysis, the planchet revealed a layered crystalline structure unlike standard mint metal. Even stranger, the die alignment was microscopically rotated in a way that perfectly preserved every detail in ultra-high relief, giving Lincoln's portrait a three-dimensional depth never seen before. When they placed it under ultraviolet light, faint ghost-like lettering appeared in the fields, invisible to the naked eye, a microscopic inscription reading First Strike Test. Somehow, impossibly, this appeared to be a prototype piece, possibly created secretly during the transition to new experimental materials, never meant to leave the mint. It should not exist. Yet here it was, flawless, glowing with an otherworldly brilliance, as if time itself had spared it from any touch or blemish. PCGS assigned it a grade of SP70, Specimen 70, the absolute pinnacle of perfection, and issued a special press release that sent shockwaves through the collecting community. News outlets seized on the story of the ordinary man who found what experts were calling the cent of the century. The frenzy that followed was like a storm. Every major collector, investor, and billionaire hobbyist in the world wanted it. Private offers soared from hundreds of thousands to millions within days. The Smithsonian requested to examine it under secure conditions. The U.S. Mint launched an internal investigation, combing through 2020 production logs to see how such a coin could exist, but found nothing, no record, no authorization, as if it had materialized from thin air. This mystery only fueled the fire. Auction houses battled for the right to sell it, and ultimately, Whitmore consigned it to a special one-lot evening sale at Heritage Auctions, broadcast worldwide from New York. The anticipation was electric. Reporters crowded the hall, cameras flashed, and the coin sat under a spotlight in a crystal holder, spinning slowly on a mirrored dais as if it were the crown jewel of an ancient empire. When the auctioneer opened bidding, the numbers leapt like wildfire: 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 80 million. The crowd gasped as each paddle rose. 2 final bidders remained, both anonymous, each rumored to be tech billionaires. The bidding war became a duel of wealth and will. At last, with a sharp crack of the gavel, the auctioneer declared, "Sold, for $143 million. The room erupted in applause and disbelief. The tiniest denomination of U.S. currency had just become the most valuable coin in human history, a 1-cent piece that now surpassed the legendary 1933 double eagle and the 1794 flowing hair dollar by an unimaginable margin. The headlines circled the globe within hours. "Penny sells for $143 million, blared the New York Times. "World's most expensive coin is a 1-cent piece," declared the BBC. Overnight, the 2020 cent became a cultural phenomenon. Museums begged for traveling exhibitions. Security companies offered armored transport. It was insured for sums normally reserved for entire art museums. The new owner remained anonymous, but whispers in the collecting world hinted it had gone to a private vault in Switzerland. The sale changed everything. Interest in coin collecting exploded to levels not seen in decades. Suddenly, millions of people were digging through their change jars and coin rolls, searching for their own miracle cent, hoping lightning might strike twice. Bank lobbies were flooded with people exchanging bills for boxes of cents. YouTube channels documenting coin hunts went viral, and the humble Lincoln cent, once dismissed as almost worthless, became the symbol of hidden fortune. Even the U.S. Mint acknowledged the event in a carefully worded statement, calling it an extraordinary anomaly that reminds us of the enduring fascination with American coinage. Experts debated endlessly how such a coin could exist. Some speculated it was an experimental strike made as part of secret trials to create a longer-lasting alloy. Others suggested it might have been intentionally struck as a presentation piece and accidentally released. Conspiracy theories bloomed, claiming it was a hidden time capsule or a message from mint engravers. But no definitive answer emerged, and the mystery only magnified its allure. Its surfaces remained flawless, untouched, and perfectly preserved, as if fate had conspired to protect it from the slightest scratch through its journey from the mint presses to Harold's workbench. In a way, it became more than a coin. It became a story, a legend, a symbol of the improbable magic hidden in everyday objects. People who had once ignored pennies began looking at them differently, holding them up to the light, wondering if they might be holding history in miniature. The myth of the $143 million cent became part of popular culture, referenced in movies, books, and talk shows as a metaphor for hidden value. And Harold, the quiet machinist who had simply been curious enough to weigh a coin, became a folk hero of numismatics, a reminder that treasure sometimes hides in the plainest places. In the weeks that followed the record-breaking sale, the shockwaves spread through the numismatic world like aftershocks from an earthquake, reshaping everything in their path. Coin shows that had once been quiet gatherings of gray-haired collectors became frenzied marketplaces buzzing with new energy. The air smelled of polished display cases and anticipation. Tables overflowed with magnifying glasses, scales, and rolls upon rolls of cents as thousands of new treasure hunters flooded into the hobby, each one convinced that lightning could strike twice. Bank tellers watched in disbelief as customers requested thousands of dollars in cent rolls, lugging away heavy boxes like prospectors hauling ore from a mine. The entire nation seemed gripped by penny fever, and the 2020 date became the most sought after of them all. Online marketplaces exploded with listings for 2020 cents described as rare, error, special, and possibly priceless. Though most were ordinary, prices skyrocketed anyway. Even a shiny, uncirculated 2020 cent that once might have fetched only a few cents above face value was now selling for $20, $30, even $50 as speculators gambled on the chance of hidden rarity. Coin grading companies were swamped, their offices buried under mountains of padded envelopes from every corner of the country, each containing hopeful submissions. Wait times stretched from weeks to months. The graders worked under microscopes for endless hours, their eyes aching, searching for anything that might explain how one humble cent had shattered every concept of value. Inevitably, the frenzy bred imitators. Counterfeiters saw opportunity in the chaos and flooded the market with fake 2020 cents, plated in copper-gold alloys to mimic the legendary coin's mysterious glow. They etched microscopic fake first strike test markings with lasers and polished them to mirror perfection. Some were so convincing they fooled even experienced dealers at first glance. The Secret Service launched a special task force to track these forgeries, raiding workshops where presses hammered out thousands of false cents destined for online auction sites. But even as the fakes multiplied, the original remained singular, untouchable, locked away in an undisclosed location under layers of security. Its insurance policy alone became legendary, rumored to cost millions annually and to involve private armed transport whenever it moved. Whispers circulated about its secret vault, buried deep in the Alps, protected by biometric locks and round-the-clock guards, as though it were a crown jewel from an ancient empire. The coin had ceased to be merely a piece of metal. It was now a global symbol of ultimate rarity. Meanwhile, the ripple effects reshaped the broader market in astonishing ways. Values of rare cents from every era spiked as new collectors poured in with wallets open and hearts racing. The once modest 1909 SVDB surged past $50,000 in top grades. The famous 1943 copper cent soared to over $1 million. Even common wheat cents, long relegated to dusty cigar boxes, suddenly commanded attention, their prices doubling and tripling. Dealers could not keep inventory in stock. Coin shops that had been fading relics of another age now had lines out the door, buzzing with young faces eager to learn the language of mint marks, strike types, and die varieties. Television shows ran features on the penny boom. News anchors held up 2020 cents on live broadcasts, telling viewers to check their change. The culture had shifted. A coin that once symbolized smallness and neglect had become the epicenter of desire. The academic world took notice too. Universities began offering new numismatics courses to meet surging demand. Economists studied the phenomenon, calling it the cent bubble, while sociologists analyzed the psychology of sudden collective obsession. Museums expanded their coin exhibits, dedicating entire wings to the history of the cent, from its origins in 1793 to the present. Children on school field trips pressed their faces to the glass cases, imagining they might one day discover the next miracle coin. It became clear that the sale of the $143 million cent had reignited something ancient and primal, the human hunger for treasure. And yet, beneath all the spectacle, a strange quiet reverence emerged. People began to look at even the humblest cents differently. Instead of dismissing them as pocket lint, they began turning them in their fingers, studying the tiny details, wondering about the journeys they had taken through time and hands. The cent, once nearly obsolete in everyday commerce, had reclaimed its place as a tiny ambassador of wonder. As the first anniversary of the sale approached, Heritage Auctions announced a commemorative exhibit titled, "The Cent That Changed the World." They recreated the auction room exactly as it had been that night: the velvet ropes, the gleaming spotlight, the mirrored dais. A hologram projection showed the bidding war climbing higher and higher while audio from the original gavel strike echoed through the gallery. Crowds waited for hours to walk through. At the end of the exhibit stood an empty glass case, softly lit, with a simple plaque. The original 2020 test cent, on loan from a private collection, temporarily unavailable for viewing. The case was empty, yet people stared at it as if it contained a holy relic, hushed and awed by its absence. That was the power the coin had achieved. It didn't even need to be seen anymore. The idea of it had become enough, and still, Harold Whitmore remained the quiet figure at the heart of the storm. He returned to his modest life, though the fortune he received changed everything. He donated a portion to local schools, built a new library wing in his town, and funded scholarships in mechanical engineering, his old trade. Yet he kept his original workbench, the same spot where the coin had first glimmered under the light. Visitors who asked about it sometimes found him there, sorting through jars of ordinary change, smiling faintly. He always said the same thing, that the true value of the coin wasn't the money, but the reminder that wonder can hide anywhere, even in the smallest, most overlooked things. The legend of the $143 million cent continued to grow, retold around dinner tables, in classrooms, and on news broadcasts. It had become more than a numismatic curiosity. It was now a modern fairy tale, proof that in a world obsessed with wealth and rarity, magic can still emerge from the humblest places. And somewhere out there, as people across the globe kept searching through their coins by lamplight, hearts pounding with hope, the dream endured that maybe, just maybe, another miracle cent was waiting to be found. Years passed, yet the echo of that single moment never faded, and the world continued to turn around the legend of the 2020 cent that had defied reality. What had begun as a shockwave settled into something deeper, something woven into the fabric of global culture. Collecting itself was transformed. The sale had ignited a golden age of numismatics that few could have imagined. Museums that had once struggled for visitors now stood crowded year-round, their grand halls filled with people tracing the lineage of coins through glass cases like pilgrims following sacred relics. The soft clink of metal became the heartbeat of a renaissance. Entire industries blossomed around the idea of hidden value. New companies arose, offering advanced scanning technology to detect microscopic anomalies in coins. Small desktop spectrometers became as common in households as coffee machines, able to read elemental composition at the push of a button. Artificial intelligence tools learned to compare millions of coin images instantly, flagging potential rarities from smartphone photos. Children scanned their pocket change with apps that glowed red or green depending on the odds of uniqueness, turning the hunt for treasure into a daily ritual. The spirit of discovery had left the auction hall and entered living rooms, classrooms, and playgrounds. Governments noticed too. Mints around the world scrambled to secure their production processes, terrified of accidental rarities escaping and causing similar frenzies. They invested in blockchain-style microtags embedded in coin blanks, invisible to the naked eye but detectable with special readers, ensuring that every coin could be traced to the exact press and moment it was struck. The U.S. Mint unveiled a futuristic, digital twin system that created a unique ID for every coin the instant it left the press. This innovation, born from fear of another uncontrolled miracle, paradoxically made the original 2020 cent even more mythical because it remained the last truly untraceable anomaly, a singular mystery from the era before total surveillance. Collectors spoke of it with reverence, calling it the final wild cent. It was no longer just an expensive coin, it had become a dividing line in history, the point where numismatics crossed from chance into certainty. And beyond the machinery and the markets, something far more human began to unfold. The 2020 cent became a symbol of curiosity itself, a metaphor adopted across disciplines. Universities used its story to teach students about probability, about how even in a world of billions, one unique outlier can emerge. Economists wrote papers about how a tiny sliver of metal could bend entire markets through the power of narrative. Artists created vast installations of pennies spiraling around a single empty pedestal to represent the gravitational pull of a single story. Philosophers debated its meaning. Was the value real, or did collective belief create it? Spiritual leaders even used the cent as a parable, a reminder that greatness can hide in the smallest things. It slipped into language. People started saying, "Find your cent," as a way of urging one another to search for hidden potential. In offices and classrooms, in workshops and kitchen tables, people passed this phrase like a quiet blessing. The coin had become folklore. Meanwhile, the actual 2020 cent remained unseen. The anonymous buyer, who had shocked the world with their $143 million bid, never revealed their identity. Rumors swirled that it had changed hands privately again, perhaps sold for even more, perhaps now owned by a sovereign wealth fund or locked inside a private space station vault orbiting Earth. Others believed it had never left Switzerland, that it lay sealed behind layers of glass and inert gas in a climate-controlled chamber, untouched by air, waiting for some future age to rediscover it. Its absence only amplified its presence. No one could see it, yet everyone could feel it, like a phantom star that shaped the orbits of everything around it. Auction houses kept a ceremonial empty case labeled simply, "The 2020 cent," as a permanent exhibit, and people lined up for hours just to stand before the nothingness and imagine the coin's invisible glow. It had passed beyond the realm of ownership. It now belonged to the collective imagination, and still, despite all the technology, all the security, and all the systems designed to ensure no other fluke could occur, people continued searching. Across the world, under kitchen lights and garage lamps, billions of 2020 cents were turned over and over in trembling fingers. Parents taught their children how to tilt the coin to catch the cartwheel luster, how to feel the sharpness of an uncirculated rim, how to hear the higher ring of a copper planchet. They whispered that somewhere out there another one might exist, waiting patiently in the flow of commerce, passing through pockets and cash drawers, hidden in plain sight. Even seasoned collectors who knew the odds were impossibly small still found themselves scanning every cent they touched, unable to resist the quiet thrill. That was the true legacy of the legendary coin. It made the world look closer. It made people see wonder in the overlooked. In an age drowning in digital noise, it had taught millions to pay attention again to something small and real and tangible, something you could hold between your fingers and imagine an impossible destiny for. The market itself matured around this new spirit. Instead of collapsing into chaos as many feared, the surge of interest stabilized into a thriving ecosystem. New grading standards emerged, new scholarship flourished, and global numismatic networks expanded. The price of common 2020 cents eventually settled back near their original worth, but the culture around them never did. They became tiny icons, keepsakes of a moment when the impossible became real. Even people who had never owned a rare coin began carrying 2020 cents in their wallets as lucky charms. Jewelers set them into gold rings and pendants, calling them talismans of fortune. Luxury watchmakers embedded them under sapphire crystals on limited edition timepieces, the copper glinting like a captured spark of history. The cent had transcended money. It had become myth made metal, story made solid, proof that reality can still surprise us. And somewhere, as the years went on, Harold Whitmore grew old, the lines of age deepening on the face that once bent over a workbench to examine a gleaming coin. He never sought the spotlight again, never tried to repeat his miracle. He spent quiet evenings on his porch, listening to the soft clatter of coins in jars brought by neighborhood kids who begged him to check their finds. He always smiled gently, weighing each piece, nodding at their enthusiasm, telling them to keep searching. Sometimes, when they asked if he thought another one would ever appear, he would pause for a long moment and then say, almost in a whisper, that he believed the world always hides one last miracle. And in that moment their eyes would shine with the same light that had first sparked in his all those years ago, when he held a small cent under a shop lamp and unknowingly touched a fragment of destiny. Centuries passed, and the world transformed beyond recognition, yet the legend of the 2020 cent endured like a faint ember that never went out. Civilizations rose and fell, technologies that once seemed miraculous faded into relics, but the story of the smallest coin that once became the most valuable still drifted through human memory like an ancient song. The planet itself changed. Vast vertical cities climbed the clouds, oceans glimmered with floating solar fields, and humanity spread outward, colonies glittering on the moon, Mars, and the hollowed asteroids beyond. Money had become almost entirely abstract, pulsing through quantum ledgers and encrypted networks at the speed of thought, yet even in this distant age, people still spoke of the 2020 cent. They spoke of it not as currency but as legend, as a symbol of the moment when humanity first collectively remembered that even the tiniest things can hold infinite meaning. It had long since ceased to be measured in dollars or credits, or any currency at all. It was priceless now, not because of wealth, but because it had survived the erosion of time and the forgetting of ages. The coin itself had become almost mythical in its solitude. For generations it had remained hidden from public view, passed quietly from one secretive owner to the next, but eventually it emerged again, unveiled in the dawnlit halls of the Interstellar Museum of Human Heritage orbiting above Earth. The unveiling ceremony drew billions of viewers from across the solar system, their faces glowing on screens suspended in the blackness of space. The coin sat in a levitating stasis field at the center of a colossal glass chamber, spinning slowly in absolute silence. Its copper-gold surface shimmered under spectral light, the image of Abraham Lincoln gazing outward as if across centuries. Around it stretched a timeline of human history, spiraling in illuminated rings, showing every coin that had ever been minted, from the crude hand-hammered discs of ancient Lydia to the ultra-thin graphene credits of the orbital age. And at the heart of it all was the 2020 cent, impossibly small, impossibly significant, a lone fragment of the past preserved while empires turned to dust. Scholars, philosophers, and poets gathered in hushed awe. Some wept openly, unable to explain why such a small thing could move them so deeply. Perhaps it was because the coin was proof that chance had once mattered, that unpredictability had once shaped destiny, that perfection had slipped unnoticed through the machinery of an age that thought it controlled everything. Generations who had grown up in a world of flawless automation gazed at it with wonder because it came from a time when error was possible, when the universe could still surprise. They studied its atomic structure with instruments that could see down to the positions of individual electrons, confirming again and again that it contained traces of metals no longer mined, alloys from forgotten processes, like stardust embedded in copper. They recreated the conditions of the 2020 mint in hyperrealistic simulations, running them millions of times, and never once did the perfect anomaly repeat. That impossibility only deepened its mystery. It became known as the singular cent. People crossed the void from distant colonies just to stand before it for a few silent minutes, and when they returned home, they spoke of the encounter in the same tone once reserved for witnessing eclipses or standing at the edge of oceans. The museum placed no price on it, only a description. The last known unrepeatable object of the industrial age. Over time, it passed from artifact to relic, from relic to icon, from icon to myth. Children in distant domed cities learned its story as their first lesson in humility, that greatness can hide in the smallest things, that value is not in size or power but in uniqueness, that even a single overlooked object can carry the weight of wonder through centuries. Artists carved its likeness into crystal monoliths. Poets wrote verses comparing its glow to the first stars seen by ancient humans. Pilgrims carried tiny copper replicas on their journeys to the edge of known space. Its image appeared on the ceremonial flag of the United Human Federation, not as currency, but as a symbol of unity, the shield from its reverse now encircled by the orbits of the planets, the words E pluribus unum glowing softly in the void. The original coin itself was visited less and less as time went on, because people feared to disturb its stillness, as though even light might wear it away. It rested in eternal suspension, untouched, perfect, silent, and still, somewhere in the quiet places between stars, its meaning endured. It was not remembered for its price tag anymore, not for the frenzy it once caused, not even for the mystery of how it came to be. It was remembered because it had reminded an entire species that the infinite can live inside the infinitesimal, that beauty can emerge unannounced, and that attention, true, patient attention, can transform the overlooked into the extraordinary. Long after the last bank had closed, long after paper and plastic and digital currency had all dissolved into history, the 2020 cent endured as the smallest monument humanity had ever made, a fragment of copper and wonder that outlived nations, languages, and empires. And when the last human traveler stood alone in some distant twilight world, sifting the ancient dust of alien soil, and found a small round disk shining faintly beneath the stars, they would remember the story of the cent that once became the most valuable object on earth, and they would smile, knowing that even at the end of all things, the tiniest spark of meaning can light the darkness forever. And so, after all the centuries and legends and spiraling stories that carried this single small coin to the edges of time and back again, the tale returns to where it truly began, to the simple act of holding a 2020 cent in your own hand. There it rests, warm from your skin, light as a whisper, just 2.5 grams of copper-plated zinc. It does not glow, it does not shimmer with impossible radiance, it does not bear any secret marks or hidden inscriptions. It is, by every measure, an ordinary coin, one of billions. And yet now you cannot look at it the same way. Because now you know what it represents. It is not just metal. It is possibility. It is the memory of the machinist who weighed a coin out of curiosity and changed the world. It is the echo of the bidding hall where hearts pounded and fortunes clashed, where silence broke into gasps as a gavel fell. It is the invisible thread that tied together collectors and dreamers, children and scholars, billionaires and schoolteachers, all drawn together by the wild idea that something so small could hold something so infinite. It is the symbol of how value is not measured by what something is made of, but by the stories it gathers, the meaning people give it, the way it can ignite wonder where there was none before. You turn it between your fingers and see the fine ridges of its rim, the tiny lines of Lincoln's coat, the quiet endurance in his gaze. You see the shield on the reverse, 13 stripes held together by one bar, the words E pluribus unum still glimmering after countless hands and countless years. You think about how many lives this single coin might have passed through, how many pockets and drawers and dusty corners it might have rested in, how many silent journeys it has made unseen, like a tiny witness to human life. And you realize that even if it never becomes rare, even if it never carries a fortune's weight, it already carries something greater, the proof that anything can matter if you decide to see it. That greatness can sleep inside the smallest things, waiting for someone with enough patience to notice. That a moment of curiosity can bend the arc of history. That wonder still hides in the places we stop looking, and so you close your hand around it, feeling the cool round shape pressed gently into your palm, and you smile, because in this quiet moment you understand what all the legends were truly about. Not wealth, not rarity, not the roar of auction crowds or the shimmer of display lights, but this, the human ability to find meaning, to choose to see magic where others see nothing. The 2020 cent may one day fade, its surface dulled by time, its story softened into myth, but what it awakened will endure. It will endure in every curious glance at loose change, in every child who lifts a magnifying glass to a tiny coin, in every heart that still believes that the universe sometimes hides miracles in plain sight. You slip the cent back into your pocket. It makes no sound, no announcement of its presence. It disappears among the ordinary things of your life. And yet you walk a little slower, you breathe a little deeper, because you know now what most people never see, that even the smallest things can carry infinite worlds within them, waiting for the right moment, the right light, the right pair of eyes to see what they truly are. Somewhere tonight, under the dim light of a kitchen lamp, a child is turning over a handful of coins on a worn wooden table. The world around them hums with the low thrum of ordinary life, the quiet murmur of voices in another room, the soft ticking of an old clock, the rustle of leaves at the window. They are not thinking of auctions or museums or fortunes. They are thinking only of the tiny glints of light dancing across copper as they tilt each coin in their small fingers, watching the surfaces flash and fade like miniature sunsets. Among them lies a 2020 cent, no different from the others, yet it catches their eye. They hold it closer, studying the way the light flows across Lincoln's cheek, how the shield lines curve like ancient banners. For a moment the world narrows down to this single disk of metal, this quiet, simple thing. They don't know its story. They don't know that somewhere far away it once shook the pillars of markets and rewrote the meaning of value. They only know it feels important, though they cannot say why. They slip it into their pocket as if saving a secret, as if saving a spark. Later they will forget why they kept it, and years from now they may find it again in a box, dulled with time, and wonder about that moment, about what they saw in it. Maybe they will remember. Maybe they will not. But the spark will wait, and somewhere, unseen, that same spark waits in every ordinary coin, in every overlooked thing that passes through our hands unnoticed. It waits in silence, patient as time itself, until someone pauses long enough to see it. And when they do, when their eyes widen and their heart stirs, the legend will quietly begin again, not with a roar, not with applause, but with the soft clink of copper on wood, the quiet moment when someone, somewhere, looks at something small, and decides to see the infinite inside it. Long after the last human voice has faded into memory, long after the last city has crumbled into dust and the last seas have turned to quiet plains of stone, long after the earth itself has been swallowed by the slow dying fire of the sun, the 2020 cent still drifts through the cold silence between the stars. It has outlived everything that once gave it meaning. The languages that named it have vanished, the nations that struck it are gone, and the hands that once passed it from palm to palm have turned to whispers in the wind of time. Yet the coin endures, locked inside a shattered fragment of an ancient museum vault that was flung outward when Earth's orbit decayed, spinning gently through the endless dark. It no longer glows, no longer shines. Its once bright copper has dulled to a deep, soft shadow of its former hue, etched with the faint scars of cosmic dust, yet its shape remains. The tiny portrait still gazes outward with quiet patience, as if watching the stars drift past. It makes no sound. It carries no message. It simply exists, a single atom-thin echo of an entire vanished world. Eons slide past like ripples of light, and galaxies wheel in slow spirals far beyond. Eventually, far from any sun, the drifting fragment is caught by the gravity of a wandering planet, a silent frozen sphere circling a black dwarf star. The coin lands softly on alien stone, untouched, unseen. No eyes remain to witness it. No voices remain to name it. It rests there alone, under an eternal night sky stitched with the thin glow of distant galaxies. And yet in that silence, in that impossible stillness, it holds something that even time cannot erase, the memory of wonder. Not words, not thoughts, just the quiet imprint of all the hearts that once saw it not as metal, but as magic. It holds the echo of gasps in auction halls, of children tilting coins under lamplight, of dreamers who believe that the smallest things can carry infinite worth. That echo lingers, faint and invisible, like a soft warmth that the void cannot take away. Perhaps someday, far beyond imagining, another intelligence will rise from the dark, a species born under different skies, shaped by different suns, with senses we cannot imagine and minds we cannot comprehend. Perhaps they will wander across the frozen ruins of that forgotten planet and find the tiny disk half buried in dust. They will not know our words or our stories. They will not know what Lincoln meant or what 1 cent once bought. But they will see its perfect circle, its intricate patterns, its patient symmetry, and they will know it was made with care. They will know it was made with intention. And in that moment, they will know we were here. They will know that once, long ago, there were beings who dreamed, who created, who sought meaning even in the smallest things. And in that brief, unspoken connection, the coin will fulfill its final purpose, not as money, not as treasure, not as legend, but as a single silent message across eternity, that we existed, and that we once saw infinity in the palm of our hand. And somewhere, drifting through the dark forever, the smallest coin ever made carries the largest story ever told.